when Greg Klein called me up to give this presentation, I was a bit hesitant. Welfare is can be a very personal topic for all of us in the industry. It can put you in the spotlight to such that it can be somewhat antagonistic. So Greg, when he asked me, he goes, Angela, he says, you've been active enough, you've really been working on this quite a bit. Can you please provide a little bit of your insight or your passion for this? And that in itself is what I want to try to do today. But what I want to try to do is kick it up a notch. I ate at Emerald's last night, so bam, I'm ready to kick this up a notch. We're going to talk a little bit today on topics that I sent an email out to people within the industry, and I also sent emails out to people in other species, and I also went out and reached out to some people that we don't normally reach out to get their input, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So a little cliffhanger. So we'll get started. Growing up a pig farmer. Yes, I am a pig farmer from the word go. I was raised in Missouri. Actually, I was born in Illinois, Tom, but raised in Missouri. And this is a picture of my sister, my brother, and I weaning pigs out onto dirt lots. So I've been in the industry long enough to run the full spectrum of outdoor farrowing, to moving them to indoors, into pens, to moving them to crates. Now the pendulum looks like it's swinging back. So having lived through all that and have experience with that, it's interesting to watch how we are swinging back. The other picture there is just a fun picture to remember back the grease pig contests. How many of you guys did that when you were young? Okay, good. Not necessarily animal welfare friendly, but it was something that we all kind of cherish from the past. And if you look in that picture and you see the tall blonde girl in the back, those 4 boys in front of me didn't have a chance. That pig was mine. Okay, so what I want to do is kind of wrap this into a story. And I don't know how many people know what a Tough Mudder competition is, but there's a few people indicating they do. I want to get you to picture that what we do as veterinarians and what we do with all the challenges that are in front of us, much like the ones Joe just commented on with health, it's all a journey. It's all a race, and it's not a race to see how fast you finish. It's a race to see if we can overcome the obstacles. And yes, I am a Tough Mudder, one way or another. We did this race last October, my family and I, and if you don't know what Tough Mudders are, it's 12 miles, give or take, and 15 military-grade obstacles. So it's a lot like what we go through in the swine industry, and they just keep putting obstacles up in front of us. So let's dive into a few of those. When I sent these questions out to the industry, I asked, tell me what you see as good and bad about what we're doing with animal welfare. Tell me who is leading the charge. Tell me who should be leading the charge. And I got all kinds of answers back. Some of these answers are quotes that I'll show you came from inside, some from outside. So keep steady, doing what's right and moving forward. Good quote. Getting the message to the people in the barn. We don't do a good job of that. We don't necessarily get the information or the studies out there on what is being done to the right people and put in place like we should. And I'm just as much to blame as anybody else. That's something we need to improve upon. We're good stewards of animal care, but bad at formalizing it. And that person that commented on that was more or less saying documentation for what we do to be able to be transparent to those people that are asking the tough questions of us and how we are taking care of the animals. Quit resisting change because you think you're caving. What part of the industry do you think that came from? That's a packer. Okay? So they are sitting back wondering why we are not at least having the discussions with the end customer, the way they perceive it, and they more or less tell us to buck up and let's get going. There are two drivers. One, what is best for the animal? And two, how will this action or inaction be seen by the public? Both are reasonable. So this gets back to perception, what the public is saying, what their concerns are, and how we respond to those concerns. What we are able to do is not always what we should do. So keep that one in the back of your mind. Are we doing what we should do? 5 freedoms. Everybody should have these memorized. Do you have them memorized? You know what they are? Not necessarily that we should be implementing them, because right now in the United States, we cannot readily implement the 5 freedoms. Most species in the United States can't implement the 5 freedoms. We're working toward that on most of them, but this is what most of the European welfare programs are based on, is the 5 freedoms. And what they are: freedom from hunger and thirst, we've got that. Freedom from discomfort due to the environment, we've got that. Here's the one we don't have so much. Freedom to express normal behaviors for the species. And as the public, or as the groups out there that are after us are saying, is that that's the ability of the animal to turn around. And that's the one we're having a lot of difficulty getting to. Freedom from pain and injury and disease. I wouldn't say freedom, but we do everything to mitigate or minimize disease, injuries, etc. The pain one we'll talk about a little bit. And then freedom from fear and distress. And we've got that. We can do that one. But the new one that's coming into play even more every day is that we have to prevent negative experiences. Now the animals have experiences. That one's going to be fun. And I don't know that I'm going to talk a lot on that one today, but I want you to tuck that away as to what is going to be discussed even more in the future. So, one of those people that I called to discuss the questions that I stated earlier was Paul Shapiro from HSUS. And I don't know whether that's stupid or just incredibly brave, but we'll discuss what he told me. We had about an hour's discussion over the telephone, very cordial, very nice about things, and when I asked him those questions, he responded. And then I said, okay, Paul, it's David Letterman time. Give me your top 10 things you think the swine industry needs to improve upon. And he goes, well, I don't know if I can come up with 10, but let me get started. I said, okay, I'll write them down. I'm going to listen and not respond. I just want to hear your top. He said, okay, crates. Crates of any kind. Gestation crates, farrowing crates, crates to leave them in after they're bred for the first however many days your industry deems necessary. Crates, crates, crates. I said, okay, written it down. Number 2, painful procedures. So again, we're seeing the pain issue. Either castration, he mentioned castration, teeth, and tails. Number 3, enrichment. And that's a fancy word for giving the animals toys or something to mentally stimulate them in his mind. Number 4, bedding. I don't know where this one came out of the blue. He says that he's seen some studies and information that if the sow's able to manipulate straw in her mouth, that it stimulates her immune system, and went into a lot of things. And I've asked him to send me the literature, but I haven't seen it yet. Weaning age. At this point in time, I couldn't contain myself, and I did respond. But he wants longer weaning ages. So he's going more of the whole foods route of that 35 to 40 days, expecting weaning age. So we discussed that for quite some time on various topics of welfare for the sow, but those were his top 5. So based on that, let's dig into the top 2 or 3 of what he said, and it was pretty consistent with the responses I got back from those people I asked as well. So we'll talk about crates. You know, this is just kind of a timeline of how the crate issue has rolled out. Sweden in '94, UK did a stall ban effective 1999. EU had a partial stall ban effective 2013. They're working toward it, and Peter did a great job of explaining how they're progressing with that. And the only thing I noted in Peter's talk when he showed the compliance with their ban was that it looks like to me the UK makes the rules, the Germans follow the rules, and the Spanish and Italian don't even know the rules exist. But, needless to say, EU is in place. Florida, the ballot initiative, as we all know, that was the first ballot initiative in the United States. Arizona was next. In 2012, in 2006, they had to be done by 2012. Oregon, California, and then Smithfield made their announcement that they were going to take company-owned sites to pen systems. Colorado had legislation put in place. Michigan and Maine, of course, much like was stated earlier, they'll pick those states that have very few pigs and so they can get a precedent set. New Zealand, Australia, so they've put stuff into place to be effective by 2017. Ohio, Manitoba, with a producer pledge, and then Rhode Island. And Cargill has also come about saying some too, but roughly just over 15.5 million sows have been affected as a total globally with making a promise or a commitment to meet the no more crate or stall gestation by a certain timeline. The U.S. has not. AVMA's position statement, and I wanted to put this in here because if you're not heavily invested in studying welfare on a daily basis, you may not be as familiar with this in AVMA's and AASV's position statement. But if you look at the wording very carefully on this, they're very careful about saying all systems have pros and cons. But the only thing that was disappointing about the AVMA's position statement, they more or less, said that the animals don't have the ability to turn around, which is a natural behavior. So they define natural behavior as being able to turn around in their statement. And that should concern all of you if you're very defined on wanting to maintain crates. Because even though it just may seem like a wordy statement, that defines things for us. AASV's position statement, which came out about that same time, basically in response to AVMA's, looked at it and tried to put more of a people focus on animal welfare in whatever facility is being utilized. And that's very important because as one of the topics I want to focus on is the people, which I think will feed into well on what Dr. Lowe will be presenting after me. So recognize that those statements are out there. Studies that have compared crates versus pens, those are just 3 that have been done in the last 10 years, since 2005. And you'll see that with each one of those, the basic conclusion is itself the title, and that's there is no real difference in performance. It's all based on the people and how they manage each of those systems. So that says you could use crates or you could use pens. As far as the welfare of the pig, they show equal balance. But then again, we have the public to consider. If you read those 4 statements, some of those are even more animal ag-based groups that are making statements that say crates are done, crates are over, put on your big girl panties and move on. Then we have Tyson, who came out earlier, or later part of last year, and I'm sorry if you can't read that, but the last statement basically urges all hog farmers to improve housing for pregnant sows by focusing on the quality and quantity of space provided, including urging all future sow barn construction and remodeling to allow for pregnant sows of all sizes to stand, lie down, stretch their legs, and turn around. They also pointed out that they support pain mitigation for tail docking and castration of pigs, which is absolutely the right idea. It's too bad we don't have anything to use, but it's a great idea. Canadian Code of Practice. I'm not going to let the Canadians out of this one. I'm sorry, guys. Canadian Code of Practice. They have basically done exactly what Peter recommended and took charge of welfare standards for their country. Okay? So I applaud that. They basically say from July 1st of 2014, so last year, if you build anything or you remodel, it has to be pen gestation. Except for the time period right after mating. And that they allow for 28 days plus or minus, or plus up to 35 days, basically, to leave her in a crate after breeding. So they're trying to maintain that. And we'll talk about why that's a good thing. But they did make a statement in the code that states producers are strongly encouraged to consider farrowing systems that permit opportunities for sows to move around. So we've got a line drawn in the sand based on that for farrowing crates. So if you're still worried about gestation crates, whew, that train's rolling by. Now we've got to worry about maintaining our farrowing crates. So let's talk a little bit about the studies that have been done on pens and pen design. There's some stuff that's been done for preference of where the animals want to stay. And if you look at the free access stalls in the picture, that's where they can go in and more or less have a little bit of protection around their body that so other sows can't intimidate them or bullying them around. And what this study said that Ed Pager did was when they tested these individuals, they preferred to go in the stall, you know, assuming that they like that for the protection it gives them, regardless of what they had been in the past. So they more or less like to go in those. If they know each other, if those girls have been around each other long enough, they've been litter mates or something, they will spend more time out in the alleyways between the stalls, but they still prefer to go in and have that little bit of protection. So that might be an indication that the sows don't mind the crates so much, or the stalls. Group sow timing of when you can mix them together, and I hope you can read that, but I'll talk us through it. What this basically is a study looking at stalls versus mixing after 3 days being bred, 14 days after being bred, and 35 days after being bred. And conception rate in the stalls and the 35 days were statistically the same. They were different than the 3 days after breeding and the 14 days. So what this more or less tells you is that it might be a good thing to have the animals in some sort of a crate or a stall for some time period after breeding. It's beneficial for the implantation and therefore maintaining pregnancy. Farrowing rate was pretty similar in that, except the 14 days after mixing was the same as the 35 and the stall. And then the last thing that's highlighted at the bottom in red is actual sows that, after they'd gone through these different treatments, how well they bred back within 10 days after being weaned. And it looks as if the stall and the 35-day mix are statistically better than if they had been from a group that had been mixed only after 3 days or 14. So again, it's a little bit of support for being able to keep those animals in crates after they're bred. I mean, this is making assumptions on barns and different styles of barns, but that's what this study is trying to indicate. And this is another study done by John Dean in 2010 looking at injuries after mixing. So the day one premix is just a baseline. Then you've got 1 day after and 7 days after. And what you're looking at is 5 days post-breeding in the blue, and 19 days post-breeding in the purple color, and 33 in the yellow or off-white color. And basically what it says, if you look at the day 1 data, the middle set of 3 bars, it basically says that just 5 days post-breeding, they fight quite a bit more than if you'd wait for another 14 days, you know, say if it was 19 days post-bred. But somewhere in that happy medium from a lesion score or an injury perspective, you need to wait for a time period before you remix them. Space allowance. There's data out there for pen space allowance, and the literature tends to evaluate really cramped versus really roomy, but there seems to be some sort of deficiency in that middle ground to really define what's needed for all these different sizes or parities of animals. So the EU directive, which Peter made mention of, is basically 17 square feet for gilts and 24 for sows. And then if you have more than 6 sows, they want you to bump it up, increase it by 10%. If you have greater than 40, which tends to give them the ability to group up into little pods or little families or little gangs, however you want to put that, you can decrease the size a little bit because they can get away from each other and stay with their little units, and it appears to make things less antagonistic. So GANU also has recommendations from 2013 for the different parities of animals, so gilts, mature sows, and then a mixture of the two. And it seems to be pretty standard around what it looks like the EU directive is. And then the AP put together information based on the different feeding types. So whether you have floor drop feeding, small pens, ESF systems, or free access systems. Space allowance. This is basically a picture of a huge farm that has implemented pen system and the ESF system as well, in that they have the electronic sow feeders. And what the industry is looking at and considering for pen layouts and use of space to be efficient and to reduce the cost on a per sow basis of going to a pen system. This farm itself was built from the ground up, intended for pen usage, so it wasn't a renovation. And what they looked very closely at was the flooring and access to the ESF system. And if you look back down through there, you can look at how the dividers are going back toward the back of the barn so that those sows can be in their little pods or little groups in each of those little areas to find their own space and not have the aggression. Because this farm actually uses dynamic pens. So whether she was just weaned or whether she's going to farrow next week, they have the potential of being in the same pen. And they basically get sorted through the ESF system. If you have further questions about that, Dr. Larry Coleman's here today, I know. I'm sure he'll be happy to talk to you. Mixing strategies. There's a lot of advice out there right now because understand, we're learning about all this stuff. Avoiding remixing, unless dynamic groups like we just talked about, mixing by parity or sizes, grouping by nutritional needs and being able to handle those animals from a welfare perspective, pulling them out to be able to treat them or to just get them away from an aggressor. Fiber, a full sow tends to be, a less aggressive sow. And separate laying areas and training the gilts is another topic that is being discussed a lot if you're using the electronic sow feeder model. Reducing aggression, and I affectionately named this study. I thought it was really, really good. The Love Thy Neighbor study. And what this is showing, up with the little ovals, the little colored ovals, you've got 3 pink ones together and 3 light blue ones together. Then you've got orange ones that are separated. What this study did is they took 2 different mixing times, and let's just take the 3 pink ones will be what they call the grouped. So they know each other. They've stood by each other every day for 7 days or for 35. So when they're put out into a pen system, if they had been there next to each other arguing and fighting over feed for 35 days. They were a bit more aggressive. You can see in the 35-day mix that black dot is the mixed groups. And the little white square below that was the girls that were separated from each other and didn't know each other. So they really don't love thy neighbor that much. They tend to go after each other if they've been built up tension standing next to each other in a crate. So this is just a piece of something that we should learn about their behavior when we're thinking about taking them from a crate to a pen. So familiarity may not make the best friends. Okay? Free access, if you're looking at those systems, what they're looking at is the space behind those free access stalls. And I heard Peter talk about this probably 5 years ago at Pig Ski Conference. You need a wider area in the back just for them to maneuver and then to get away from each other because, like I said, they don't always like each other. So that's what the data is telling us, that there's some happy medium between that 3 feet and that 10 feet wide area for them to be able to maneuver. Stall size and genotypes. I mean, I have to throw in genotypes just from the perspective of we need to know our animals. The crates that we have, be they 7 feet long, be they 8 feet long, or 24 inches on center wide, we need to evaluate that. If we're keeping crates and you want to show that you're doing the most to promote the welfare of the animal within the crate, this is a great area to really focus on because those crates were designed to be the length they need to be, but we made the width of them based on the width of her, not the depth of her. Okay? So you can see here that in the depth column, the second column, 22, 23, 24. If our crates are 24 inches on center and you have a girl that's 24 inches in depth, when she starts to get more depth because she's pregnant, do you think that 24 inches on center is what we need to have? Just a thought. Pain mitigation, next topic. So we go from crates and stalls to talking a little bit about pain mitigation. With sows, lameness, and postpartum pain. Piglets, castration, tail docking, teeth clipping. Growing pigs again, lameness, surgical procedures. There's pharmacology out there that is being utilized in the EU as well as Canada. We've got analgesics, which is our NSAIDs, which being a runner, I like those a lot. Opioids, which we really don't utilize. Anesthetics, topical or general. And sedatives and tranquilizers, which is just something to sedate, doesn't necessarily help with pain. So currently, there are no compounds in the United States that are approved for pain mitigation. And that's a problem. Because within the next few years, we will be asked to make sure we're doing something about castration and tail docking. And we need something. I'm going to show you a couple studies that have been done at Iowa State that were done. This is Monique's study that was done. She's now at Ohio State. She did it on sow lameness, where they induced sow lameness in animals and then dosed them with either Meloxicam or Banamine and looked at their tolerance for pain with a pressure test and also with a heat application test that they developed. So not only is Iowa State working on developing ways to measure pain, but then they're trying to do a proof of concept of these specific NSAIDs that would be beneficial for the industry. And if you want to know more about that particular paper, it's available. And I think Monique, I think she told me she would be here. I can't remember for sure, but she's a good person to talk to about that specific study. Meloxicam, as you know, is an NSAID approved for swine in the EU and Canada. And what they have it labeled for is locomotive disorders, so lameness, They also have it for MMA, and then for surgical procedures such as castration. Why is it not approved in the U.S.? That's a good question. Ask BI later, I think. Sorry. Okay. Pain mitigation cost. I went ahead and asked Monique what her actual study cost on a per sow basis. So I just used a 500-pound sow for both of those products, and she gave me these numbers to be able to show you what a typical one-time treatment would cost based on what they did. But I do want to emphasize this is not a legal use right now. It's in studies, and the pharmacokinetics has not been defined for weight and age of pigs yet for us to be able to utilize this. So don't think I'm advocating its use as you walk out the door. Canadian Code of Practice, again, I'll pull that in. Castration, anything performed after 10 days of age must be done with anesthetic and analgesia as it sets right now. But as of July 1st, in Canada, any age that they're castrated must be done with analgesic. They're lucky they have something. But how'd they get Meloxicam before the U.S.? Tail docking. Over 7 days of age must be done with pain control. And we do some of our processing here in the U.S. at 7 days of age and maybe sometimes a little older. So we really need to sit back and evaluate that. Jessica Bates, who is currently at Iowa State, and you may have seen this published recently in quite a few places, Meloxicam provided orally to the sow for passive transfer to the piglets. And again, another way to measure pain in piglets, they used thermography to look at the heat generated from the piglet, from the actual skull of that piglet, to indicate whether the piglet was stressed or not. Because basically, if the sympathetic nervous system is affected by pain, the extremities tend to shut down. And that's what they're trying to show with what they used here. And with their study, they did find that it was effective. So it has great potential. If we wanted to try to apply something to the sow, again, this is a proof of concept. The thing that we have to worry about and the thing that needs to be defined is, since it is an NSAID, will we be causing ulcers, potentially, or gastric ulcerations, depending on the dose used? So that's why the studies need to be done to give us an indication of what dose is appropriate for what we need to do. The other thing, which I'm not just going to hammer BI, is the regulatory requirements that companies need to jump through with the FDA to get things approved. Canada does not have some of those, so they were able to get it approved there, but with our FDA regulations and requirements to get products approved, it's a much longer road, a much more expensive road. So I understand a bit of that. So what's right for the pig? We've talked a bit about housing. We've talked a bit about pain mitigation and people. Shall we talk a bit about people? Foundation of care of the pig. No matter what system we're going to be utilizing, no matter what line in the sand we decide to draw, people are the number one thing. Agriculture is notoriously losing their population of people to work. We are now having to delve into a pool of employees that have never done anything in agriculture, may not have even seen a pig before. How do we bring them up to speed and being able to do what we need to do and keep animal welfare at the top of their mind? So some of the comments I got back from people that, with the questions that I sent out, will play into this, but technologies. Just like the crop side of the agriculture, just like the slaughter plant facilities, we have to up our game on technology. We'll have fewer employees and need to do more. And that's where we need a lot of smart people to help us be able to design and come up with ways to do Well, we're currently doing better, and with people with less experience. So we've got the science, we'll have regulatory pressure, but we've got to be able to teach this. Training. Who and how? I would challenge that we haven't done a good job to this point, on welfare anyway. We've got PQA+, that's incredible. That program's done a lot for our industry. We've got TQA, that's doing a good job. But I think I've got a link here. There's, of course, Iowa State is doing a lot in training. They've got this program where they train both veterinarians and also production personnel. I'll give Carthage a plug. They have done a fabulous job. If you go on their website and look at what they're doing, it's not just the training, but the method at which they're doing it. They're utilizing new technologies with multimedia to get to people when they can't personally be there. And that's something that we need to do a better job of getting either, web meetings or something more than a conference call, because you lose so much when you can't show pictures. But we need to do a better job of utilizing multimedia to get the information we need to out there. Okay, can you go back? Thank you. Whistleblowers. How many of you have whistleblowing policies in your farms? Okay, I'm seeing a few hands. I should see the entire room with hands up. People should be able to feel or be empowered that if they see something wrong going on, they know who to call and they know who to do it quickly and without repercussions to them. So that's part of the self-governing thing. Timely euthanasia is still huge. We need to do a better job of giving the people on the farm the empowerment to get that done appropriately. Through decision trees, through, again, training them appropriately, and we need to do a better job of documenting that we've trained them and what we've trained them on. Handling. Go ahead and hit this link. John McGlone did a study where he wasn't even looking at animal welfare. Well, he was, but it was in bedding, and what bedding is best on trucks. But one of the things that he found while people were standing there evaluating the loading and unloading of the pigs going on trucks or coming off trucks at the plants, was that we still have, while people are watching and people should be at their best, on their best behavior, we still have 10% of those trucks that he watched with very aggressive behavior. A lot of electric prodding, a lot of slapping, a lot, work running too many pigs at once. We still have something we need to work on that seems to, we all assume, has been taken care of. And you'll note there that the plants did very well, less than 1% with aggressive behavior. And a lot of that's regulatory, but at least they had that. Go ahead and hit the link, please. So these employees are not just hired hands anymore. We have to empower them, we have to train them, and we have to know what to train them on. And what training method is going to be best for their uptake of the information. I'm hoping Jim will pound on that a little bit too. We need to put them in the right seats on the bus. We need to make sure we have the right people doing the right things. Not everybody can euthanize. Not everybody should be moving sows. We have some employees on farms that if they live, breathe, and get to work on time, we're happy. Those people may not be who we want on the farms. We need to reevaluate that or put them in the right seat. Give them the job or the position that fits best their personality. So, the multimedia is out there. They're watching us all the time. We have to assume that anything and everything we do and say can appear on YouTube at any point in time. That's just a matter of it. But we've got the right people. We've got people out there that we can help us tell our story, no matter what system we utilize for sows, no matter how we're trying to change the pain mitigation story for pigs, how we're training people, and being able to express that. We do a horrible job of getting information out to the general public. I speak to a lot of groups of mommy bloggers, and they're really happy once they realize what we're trying to do to take care of the animals. They want to make sure they eat, they drink, they have, a nice environment to live in, that we genuinely care. And then explain to them some of the things that they can't quite understand. When my son was 4, he's now 14, I was in my office one day working away, and he comes walking into my office, and I had a national hog farmer laying on the floor, and it was a picture of a sow, a frontal shot of a sow in a gestation crate. And he comes walking in there and he goes, "Hey, Mom, why is that pig in jail?" From the mouth of babes. That's how we're perceived. You have to step back and realize what the general public is seeing, and then be able to explain it or change it. So, we've got labels to worry about. We've got all the multimedia. We need to be able to show and tell people what we do. We need to tell the story. We need to walk the talk. There are some things that we're not walking what we talk. And that's okay. I'm just as guilty as everybody else. So where do we go from here? And I'm finishing up, Brian. You're still standing up, I'm sure. Crates and individual pens. We need to determine the options farm by farm. Canada was really smart in what they did with their standards of practice. They basically said, if you've got crates, you can maintain crates until you either change out or build something new. Because I know we've got people in the industry that say, "You're going to pry these crates out of my cold, dead hands." I understand that. But we probably need to look at something to where we draw a line in the sand. Canada did something very smart in that move, in my opinion. My opinion only. Pain mitigation. We have to have something. If I don't get anything else done with this presentation today, I need the pharmaceutical companies to step up and provide us with a tool. Will that be the only thing we use for pain mitigation? No. We have an immunocastration product out there that's not being utilized. We can have procedures that we adopt or change. So there's other things. But if the pharmaceutical industries can jump on board, that would be fantastic. And the regulatory, another story. And we've got the people, and I'm going to leave it to Jim to delve further into the people issue, but we need to be able to train them, and I'm hoping we're not so set in our own paths that we aren't equipped to do so. Swine producers have never stood still. From the time I was unloading pigs on dirt lots till today, we have always taken up the challenge. Joe talked about the challenge of a new disease, a transboundary disease coming in, and how quickly we responded. How quickly the Canadian producers and veterinarians responded. We're phenomenal at being able to jump to attention and doing what we need to do. I certainly hope we do that with welfare, because right now we're kind of standing still. But, just like a Tough Mudder, just like riding a Harley, it's the journey, it's not the destination. So if anything can happen with welfare, and if we can figure out how to portray our story, how to improve it, which were things we need to improve, everything's possible. We just have to remember it's what's right for the pig, not always the fact that we have to calculate out the bottom dollar to make that dollar, but doing what's right for the pig.